It's sometime around 10 o'clock at night. You're on the couch, half watching something, and your cat walks into the room. They don't look at the TV. They don't look at the window. They look directly at you, and then they open their mouth. Miss Rowe. And without thinking, you answer, "What?" or "Hey buddy," or just that soft, low sound you make back at them, the one you'd be embarrassed to admit you make. Most of us assume we know what that exchange is. Cat wants food. Cat wants attention. Cat is just making cat noise. It's a sound, not a sentence. But behavioral research tells a completely different story. Because what just happened, that moment of eye contact and vocalization, is one of the most biologically extraordinary communication systems ever documented between two different species. A system that cats did not have 10,000 years ago. A system they built specifically, and apparently only, for us. And most cat owners have no idea. Let's start with the obvious theory, because it sounds completely reasonable. Cats meow because they want something. Food, the door opened, your hand moving on them. Meowing is just how they ask. Here's the problem with that. Adult cats living without human contact, feral colonies, wild cats, cats observed in purely cat social environments, barely meow at each other at all. They have an entire vocabulary for cat-to-cat communication, chirps, trills, chatters, hisses, yowls. But the sustained, directed meow that your cat just aimed at your face? Field researchers almost never observe that between adult cats. Kittens meow at their mothers. It's a distress and contact call. I'm here, I need you, come find me. And then, as they mature, that behavior largely disappears in cat-to-cat interaction. Except in cats who live with humans. In those cats, it not only persists, it expands, it diversifies, it gets more sophisticated. So the question isn't, why does your cat meow? The question is, why did cats, and only cats, among all the animals that have lived alongside humans, develop this entirely separate, human-directed communication system in the first place? The answer starts about 10,000 years ago. But first, the neurochemistry. Because the science of what happens in your cat's brain when they look at you and vocalize is genuinely extraordinary. In 2009, researcher Karen McComb at the University of Sussex published a study in the journal Current Biology that reframed everything we thought we knew about cat vocalization. McComb and her team recorded cats in two contexts: cats soliciting food from their owners, and cats in non-solicitation settings. And they found something that nobody had predicted. When cats were actively soliciting a human, asking for something, they embedded a high-frequency cry within their purr, a sound at around 300 to 600 hertz. And what that frequency overlaps with, almost exactly, is the frequency range of a human infant's cry. When researchers played the solicitation purrs to human volunteers, including people who had never owned a cat in their lives, participants rated them as significantly more urgent and harder to ignore than the non-solicitation purrs. The effect was consistent across demographics. It didn't matter whether you were a cat person or not. Your nervous system is pre-wired to respond to that frequency range. It's part of how human parents are neurologically equipped to respond to their infants. And cats, over thousands of years of living alongside us, appear to have figured that out. This isn't something a cat consciously learns. It's something that got selected for. The cats whose vocalizations triggered stronger human responses got fed more reliably, were kept safer, were more likely to survive and reproduce. Generation by generation, that acoustic signature got refined. McComb's team called it embedded cry. What it means is this: when your cat meows at you, they are activating the same neural response pathway that evolved to make you respond to a crying baby. They didn't stumble onto that frequency by accident. They found the one signal your brain is literally built not to ignore. And that's just the sound itself. What happens when you actually respond is a separate layer of science entirely. But here's where it gets really interesting, because this isn't just acoustics, it's chemistry. In 2019, A research team including scientists from Azabu University in Japan published findings showing that the human-cat interaction, specifically mutual gaze and vocal exchange, triggers measurable oxytocin release in both parties. The cat. Oxytocin is the neurochemical most associated with social bonding. It's released during mother-infant interaction, during close physical contact between bonded pairs, during moments of mutual trust. It's sometimes called the love hormone, though researchers prefer bonding molecule because it's more precise. It reinforces social memory, reduces threat response, and deepens the felt sense of connection between two individuals. Here's what makes the cat-human version unusual. Wolves and dogs also show oxytocin release during human interaction, but dogs were domesticated in a fundamentally different way. Dogs evolved from pack animals. They already had sophisticated social bonding systems. The transition to bonding with humans, for dogs, was largely a matter of redirecting an existing drive. Cats are solitary hunters. Their wild ancestors have no equivalent social bonding system. There was no template for this. The oxytocin loop that now runs between a cat and their owner, triggered by eye contact, by vocalization, by the sound of your voice answering them, was built from scratch, selected for over millennia of proximity, until cats developed a neurochemical attachment system specifically for humans that they do not use with other cats. Think about what that means. Your cat doesn't have a word for what you are to them, but their brain has a molecule for it, and every time they open their mouth and look at you, that molecule starts moving. When did this start? The answer is basically from the beginning of civilization as we know it. Around 10,000 years ago, in the farming villages of the Fertile Crescent, modern-day Syria, Iraq, Turkey, humans began storing grain at scale for the first time. Those grain stores attracted rodents, and rodents attracted wildcats. It wasn't a planned partnership. Wildcats drifted toward human settlements because the hunting was good. Humans tolerated them, and eventually welcomed them because the rodent problem was real and the cats were solving it. Neither species intended to bond, and yet, in 2004, archaeologists excavating a Neolithic burial site in Cyprus found the remains of a human and a cat interred together, deliberately, approximately 9,500 years ago. The cat's skeleton showed no signs of being food. Its placement, close to the human, oriented in the same direction, suggested intentional companionship in death. These weren't pest controllers being disposed of, they were being buried like they mattered. Genetic analysis of domestic cats, published by researchers at Washington University School of Medicine in 2017, revealed that domestic cats share roughly 95% of their genome with their wildcat ancestors, far less genetic divergence than we see in dogs. But the genes that have changed are telling. Among the most significantly altered genes associated with fear response, reward processing, and the ability to form positive associations with humans. Cats didn't change much to live with us, but the changes they did make were precise, targeted, as if, over 10,000 years, evolution quietly rewired the one part of them that needed rewiring, the part that decides whether a human is something to fear or something to trust. Your cat meowing at you is the end product of that entire arc. Now, I want to tell you about a study that doesn't get talked about enough, because the finding seems almost paradoxical at first. Researchers studying human-cat vocal interaction, including teams at University of Vienna, have documented something called conversational turn-taking between owners and their cats. Not just cats vocalizing and owners responding, but genuine back-and-forth sequences with pauses, timing, and responsiveness that mirrors the structure of human conversation. And what they found was extraordinary. The cats in these exchanges were actively modulating their vocalizations based on owner response, louder if ignored, softer and more varied when engaged, shorter bursts with more pauses when the owner was talking back. They were having a conversation, not symbolically, structurally, and the owners, almost universally, reported that they understood what their cat was saying. Not always the specific content, but the emotional register. Urgency, contentment, frustration, affection. Ask yourself, how is that possible between two species with no shared language? The answer is that the language isn't shared, but the architecture of communication is. The rhythm of call and response, the softening of tone when met with warmth, the escalation when needs go unmet. That structure is old, far older than words. Maybe your cat isn't talking at you. Maybe they're doing something more ancient than talking. Maybe they're just making sure you know they're there, and that you know they know you're there. There's one more layer to this, and it might be the most profound. A 2021 study from researchers in France, published in the journal PLOS One, examined behavioral synchrony between cats and their owners, the degree to which their activity patterns, sleep rhythms, and emotional states aligned over time. What they found was that bonded cat-owner pairs showed significantly correlated behavioral patterns across days and weeks. Not just because they shared a schedule, the synchrony held even in subtle ways: mood fluctuations, rest periods, social engagement. Owners and their cats were, in a measurable sense, moving through their days together, attuned to each other. This kind of synchrony is well documented in bonded human pairs. It appears in parent-infant dyads, in long-term romantic partners, in close friends. It had not been expected, at this level, in cross-species pairs. The researchers concluded that the human-cat bond, built over thousands of years of vocal and social exchange, produces a form of behavioral attunement that is neurologically, measurably real. When your cat walks into the room, finds you, and speaks, they are not interrupting your evening. They are checking the synchrony, making sure you're still in it together. There's one last thing I want to tell you, and it might be the most important part of this video. If your cat has been a talker, a cat who greets you at the door, who follows you to different rooms and announces themselves, who has specific sounds for specific situations, and one day, that goes quiet, pay attention. Cats are creatures of deeply ingrained habit. When a well-established vocal behavior disappears, there is almost always a reason. Sometimes it's environmental, a new pet, a new person in the home, a shift in your schedule that has disrupted their sense of safety. Sometimes it's something more serious. Pain is often one of the first things to silence a cat, long before you'd see a limp or a change in posture. Cats are exceptionally skilled at concealing illness and discomfort. It's an evolutionary survival instinct, and a sudden withdrawal from communication can be an early signal. In older cats, a loss of vocalization or a change in its character can indicate feline cognitive dysfunction, the cat equivalent of dementia, which affects an estimated 28% of cats aged 11 to 14 and over 50% of cats over 15. Your cat doesn't have language. They don't have another way to tell you something is wrong. Behavior is the only vocabulary they have, and silence, when there used to be a voice, is a word. So the next time your cat walks in, looks straight at you, and opens their mouth, remember what's actually happening. 10,000 years of selective evolution, refining a vocal system that didn't exist until they started living with us. A neurochemical feedback loop, oxytocin running between two species, triggered by nothing more than eye contact and the sound of your voice. An acoustic signature, tuned, over millennia, to the precise frequency your brain is wired not to ignore. And a pattern of synchrony and attunement that researchers have only recently begun to measure, but that cat owners have always, quietly, known was real. All of it pointing at one thing. They built this voice for you. There is no one else they use it for. And the next time you answer, whatever sound you make back, however silly it feels, know that you're not just talking to your cat. You're completing a loop that took 10,000 years to build. If this changed the way you hear your cat, subscribe to Cat's Secret World and drop a comment below. I want to know, what does your cat's voice sound like? Do they have a specific sound just for you? And if you want to go deeper, the next video covers what your cat is actually communicating when they slow blink at you. It's quieter than a meow, and the science behind it might move you even more.